Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to find a person who truly cared about them? Not their money, not their status, but who they really were? In a world where appearances often matter more than character, stories like this remind us that genuine kindness still exists. Sometimes the people who seem to have the least are the ones with the biggest hearts. And sometimes, the greatest test of character is one that nobody knows they're taking. This is the story of Victoria Reynolds, a 38-year-old CEO who secretly tested every person she dated. But the one person who finally passed her test wasn't wealthy, powerful, or impressive on paper. He was a struggling single father who had almost nothing. Victoria Reynolds was the founder and CEO of a successful technology company in Chicago. To the outside world, she had everything. A luxury apartment overlooking the city skyline, expensive cars, designer clothes, and a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But despite all her success, she carried a deep loneliness. For years, she had tried dating. At first, she was honest about her position and wealth. But she quickly noticed a pattern. The men she met seemed fascinated by her lifestyle rather than her personality. They loved the private dinners, luxury vacations, and exclusive events. Yet somehow, none of them truly saw her. After several painful relationships ended in disappointment, Victoria became increasingly guarded. She wondered whether anyone could love her without knowing she was rich. So she created a secret test. Whenever she agreed to a blind date, she never revealed who she really was. Instead of arriving in luxury vehicles, she drove an old used sedan she had purchased specifically for these occasions. She wore simple clothes. No designer brands. No expensive jewelry. She told people she worked as an administrative assistant for a small company. And then she watched. Over the years, dozens of men failed. Some lost interest within minutes. Others politely finished dinner and never called again. A few even criticized her for lacking ambition. Every failed date confirmed her fears. People were judging her based on what they thought she could offer them. Then one rainy Thursday evening, everything changed. Victoria had almost canceled the blind date. She was exhausted after a difficult week at work and had little faith that this meeting would be any different. The date was arranged through a mutual friend. The man's name was Daniel Carter. 42 years old. A single father. A school maintenance worker. When Victoria arrived at the small neighborhood cafe, she immediately noticed him. Daniel wasn't staring at his phone like most people waiting for dates. Instead, he was helping an elderly woman carry a tray of coffee to her table. He smiled warmly and returned to his seat. Victoria felt something unusual. Curiosity. When she introduced herself, Daniel stood up politely and pulled out her chair. Throughout the conversation, he asked thoughtful questions. Not about money. Not about status. Not about what she owned. He wanted to know what made her happy. What books she enjoyed. What dreams she still had. For the first time in years, Victoria felt like someone was genuinely interested in her. As the evening ended, she prepared for the usual disappointment. But Daniel surprised her. He thanked her sincerely and asked if she'd like to meet again. Not because she was successful. Not because she was wealthy. Simply because he enjoyed spending time with her. Over the next several weeks, they continued seeing each other. Victoria remained committed to her secret identity. She wanted to know who Daniel really was. And what she discovered touched her deeply. Daniel's life wasn't easy. 5 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness. Since then, he had raised his 10-year-old son, Ethan, alone. Money was often tight. Some months were incredibly difficult. But despite the challenges, Daniel remained remarkably positive. Every decision he made revolved around his son. He worked long hours, cooked every meal, attended every school event, and somehow still found time to help neighbors whenever they needed assistance. One afternoon, Victoria witnessed something she couldn't stop thinking about. She arrived early for a planned lunch and spotted Daniel across the street. A homeless man was sitting on a bench, shivering in the cold. Without hesitation, Daniel removed his own jacket and handed it to him. Then he quietly walked away. He never noticed Victoria watching. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was simply who he was. That evening, Victoria found herself questioning everything. For years, she'd believed her test was designed to find honesty. But now she realized something deeper. She wasn't searching for honesty. She was searching for kindness. And Daniel seemed to have an endless supply of it. Months passed. Their relationship grew stronger. Victoria met Ethan, and the young boy immediately adored her. They spent weekends at parks, community events, and simple family dinners. For the first time in many years, Victoria felt something she thought she'd lost. Hope. But the longer the relationship continued, the heavier her secret became. She cared deeply for Daniel. Yet she was still hiding the truth. Every day she delayed telling him made the situation more complicated. Then something happened that forced her to make a decision. One evening, Daniel received devastating news. The apartment building where he rented a small unit was being sold. All tenants had 90 days to move out. The rent prices throughout the city had risen dramatically. Finding affordable housing would be nearly impossible. Victoria watched as stress consumed him. Daniel picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, slept less. Yet he never complained. His only concern was Ethan. He wanted his son to feel safe. One night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Daniel finally admitted his fears. He confessed that he wasn't sure how he would manage. Victoria listened quietly. Part of her desperately wanted to solve the problem immediately. She could purchase an entire building without noticing the expense. But doing so would reveal everything. She knew the moment had come. The next day, Victoria invited Daniel to dinner. He assumed it was another casual evening together. Instead, she drove him to downtown Chicago. Daniel looked confused as they approached a towering glass office building. When Victoria parked, he stared at the company logo displayed near the entrance. His expression changed. He recognized the name. Everyone in the city knew the company. It was worth hundreds of millions. "Why are we here?" he asked. Victoria took a deep breath. Then she told him everything. She explained her real identity. Her position as CEO. Her wealth. The years of failed relationships. The secret test she had used on every blind date. Daniel sat in stunned silence. For several moments neither of them spoke. Victoria's heart pounded. This was the moment she had feared for months. Finally, Daniel looked at her. Not with excitement. Not with greed. Not with anger. Just sadness. Victoria felt her stomach drop. Then Daniel quietly asked a question she never expected. "Why did you think you had to hide who you were?" Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever asked that. Most people focused on the money. Daniel focused on her pain. He wasn't upset that she was wealthy. He was upset that life had hurt her enough to make her hide. For the first time, Victoria fully understood why he was different. Daniel wasn't evaluating her bank account. He was thinking about her feelings. That was something money could never buy. Still, Daniel admitted that rebuilding trust would take time. Victoria understood. She had deceived him, even if her intentions were understandable. Over the following weeks, they had many honest conversations. No secrets. No tests. No disguises. Just truth. And with each conversation, their bond became stronger. One afternoon, Victoria finally learned something she never knew. Months earlier, during their third date, Daniel had already suspected she wasn't who she claimed to be. Some of her habits. The way she spoke about business. Her confidence. The occasional slip in conversation. None of it matched the story of an administrative assistant. Victoria looked shocked. "Then why didn't you say anything?" Daniel smiled. "Because I liked you." Victoria laughed through tears. For years, she'd carefully designed a test to reveal people's true character. Yet the only man who passed had quietly refused to play the game. A year later, Daniel and Ethan moved into a beautiful home. Not because Victoria rescued them, but because they built a future together. Victoria learned how to trust again. Daniel discovered that accepting love wasn't weakness. And Ethan gained something he had missed for years: a complete family. The most remarkable part of the story wasn't Victoria's wealth. It wasn't the company. It wasn't the luxury lifestyle. It was the fact that a struggling single father with very little money possessed something more valuable than anything she owned: character, compassion, and a heart that never stopped caring about others. Sometimes we spend our lives searching for extraordinary people, only to discover that true greatness is hidden inside ordinary acts of kindness. And sometimes the person who changes your life isn't the richest person in the room. It's the person who still chooses kindness when life has given them every reason not to. If this story touched your heart, remember that every person you meet may be carrying struggles you cannot see. A simple act of compassion, a moment of understanding, or a kind word can have a greater impact than you'll ever know. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories about kindness, humanity, and the moments that remind us what truly matters in life. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.